Young Michael Jackson was struggling to perfect a dance move that would later become the moonwalk. Then Sammy Davis Jr. shared a technique he'd learned from Bill Robinson decades earlier, and that secret created the most iconic dance move in history. It was March 17, 1979, and the recording studio at Quincy Jones's compound in Bel Air was filled with the controlled energy that marked the creation of what would become Off the Wall, Michael Jackson's breakthrough solo album. Michael, now 20 years old, was in the process of transforming from the lead singer of the Jackson 5 into the artist who would eventually be known as the King of Pop. But on this particular afternoon, Michael wasn't focused on vocals or arrangements. He was in one of the studio's rehearsal rooms, working on something that had been frustrating him for months, a dance move he had seen street dancers performing that involved sliding backwards while appearing to walk forward. Michael had always been a perfectionist when it came to dancing, studying every performer he could find and incorporating their techniques into his own evolving style. He had learned from James Brown's explosive energy, from Gene Kelly's fluid athleticism, and from Fred Astaire's precision and grace. But this particular move, this illusion of defying gravity and physics, was proving more challenging than anything he had attempted before. The weight distribution isn't right, Michael muttered to himself as he attempted the move for what seemed like the 100th time that day. I can see what it's supposed to look like, but I can't figure out how to make my body do it. Quincy Jones, who had been working with Michael on the album, happened to walk by the rehearsal room and noticed his frustration. Quincy understood that Michael's quest for perfection in every aspect of his performance was part of what would make him a superstar, but he also knew when the young artist needed help. "Michael," Quincy called from the doorway, "you know there's someone I think you should talk to about that move you're working on." Michael looked up, sweating and slightly out of breath from his repeated attempts. "Who's that?" "Sammy Davis Jr. I've seen him do something very similar, and he's been perfecting moves like that for longer than either of us has been alive." The suggestion made perfect sense. Sammy Davis Jr. was not just one of the most famous entertainers in the world. He was also widely acknowledged as one of the most technically gifted dancers of his generation. If anyone could help Michael master this elusive technique, it would be Sammy. Within an hour, Quincy had arranged for Sammy to visit the studio. Sammy, who was always generous with his time when it came to helping younger performers, was intrigued by Quincy's description of what Michael was attempting. Sliding backwards while appearing to walk forward, Sammy had said over the phone, "That sounds like something Bill Robinson showed me back in 1943. I haven't thought about that in years." When Sammy arrived at the studio, he found Michael still in the rehearsal room, still working on the move, and still struggling with the same fundamental problem. "Mr. Davis," Michael said, immediately standing and extending his hand with the respectful formality that marked all his interactions with entertainment legends. "Thank you so much for coming. Quincy said you might be able to help me with this move I've been trying to learn. Call me Sammy, Michael, and I'm always happy to help a fellow dancer. Show me what you're working on." Michael demonstrated the move as best he could, sliding backwards a few steps while trying to maintain the illusion of walking forward. It was clearly recognizable as the basic concept of what would become the moonwalk, but it lacked the smoothness and the magic that would eventually make it legendary. "I can see what you're trying to do," Sammy said, nodding appreciatively. "And you're closer than you think. But there's a secret to this move that most people never figure out on their own." "What's that?" Sammy smiled, and Michael could see that he was about to receive knowledge that had been passed down through generations of performers. "This move, or something very much like it, was taught to me by Bill Robinson when I was about your age. Bill Bojangles Robinson, the greatest tap dancer who ever lived. He called it the float, and he told me it was one of the most technically demanding illusions in all of dance." Michael's eyes widened. Bill Robinson was a legend whose influence on American dance was immeasurable, and the idea that he was about to learn a technique that originated with Robinson himself was both thrilling and humbling. "The secret," Sammy continued, "isn't in your feet. Everyone thinks it's about how you move your feet, But that's not where the magic happens. Where does it happen? In your center of gravity. Bill taught me that the illusion works because you're actually shifting your entire body weight in a way that contradicts what your feet appear to be doing. Sammy moved to the center of the rehearsal room and assumed a position that Michael immediately recognized as the starting point for the move. "Watch my torso," Sammy said. "Don't watch my feet. Don't watch my legs. Watch my center of gravity." What followed was a demonstration that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Sammy appeared to glide backwards across the floor while his legs moved in a walking motion that suggested he should be moving forward. But because Michael was focusing on Sammy's torso, as instructed, he began to understand something that he had been missing. "I see it," Michael said, his voice filled with excitement. "Your weight is shifting backwards even though your legs are moving forward. It's like your body is being pulled backwards by an invisible force." "Exactly," Sammy replied, pleased that Michael was grasping the concept so quickly. "The audience sees the walking motion of your legs and assumes your body should be moving forward. But your center of gravity is actually moving backwards, and that's what creates the illusion." "But how do you do it? How do you shift your weight like that, while still maintaining the leg motion?" Sammy spent the next hour breaking down the technique in a way that no one had ever explained it to Michael before. He showed him how to isolate the movement of his upper body from the movement of his legs, how to use specific muscle groups to create the backwards momentum while maintaining the forward walking motion, and most importantly, how to practice the move in stages until all the components could be combined seamlessly. "Bill Robinson told me something when he taught me this move," Sammy said, as Michael began to successfully execute short versions of the technique. He said, "Sammy, this move isn't just about dancing. It's about making people believe something impossible is happening right in front of their eyes. That's the real magic of entertainment, making the impossible seem effortless." As Michael practiced under Sammy's guidance, the move began to transform from a clunky approximation into something that was genuinely magical. The backward slide became smoother, the illusion became more convincing, and most importantly, Michael began to make the technique his own. "The key to making this move legendary," Sammy explained, "isn't just executing the technique, it's about the showmanship. You have to sell the illusion. You have to make the audience believe that you're defying gravity itself." "How do you do that?" "With your face, with your attitude, with your entire presence." When Bill Robinson did this move, people didn't just see a dance technique, they saw magic. "When I do it, I try to channel that same sense of wonder." Michael nodded, understanding that what Sammy was teaching him went far beyond just the mechanics of the movement. Over the course of that afternoon, Michael not only mastered the basic technique, but he began to develop his own variations and improvements. His version was smoother than what Sammy had shown him, more fluid and more dramatic. He was taking the foundation that Bill Robinson had created, that Sammy had preserved and modified, and evolving it into something uniquely his own. "Michael," Sammy said as they wrapped up the session, "what you've done with this move today is exactly what every great performer does. You've taken something that was taught to you and made it your own. That's how entertainment evolves." "I can't thank you enough," Michael replied. "This is going to change everything for me." Sammy smiled knowingly. "I have a feeling you're going to take this move places that Bill Robinson and I never imagined. And when you do, just remember to pass it on to the next generation." What Michael couldn't have known at that moment was how prophetic Sammy's words would prove to be. The technique that Sammy had taught him, rooted in Bill Robinson's original innovation, would become the foundation for what Michael would eventually call the moonwalk, a move that would define his career and become one of the most recognizable dance moves in the history of entertainment. In the months following that session with Sammy, Michael continued to refine and develop the move. He practiced it constantly, adding his own stylistic flourishes and developing variations that enhanced the basic illusion. He began incorporating it into his performances, first in small venues and then on larger stages. But it was on May 16, 1983, during a performance of Billie Jean on the television special Motown 25. Yesterday, Today, Forever, that Michael's version of the move, now called the moonwalk, was introduced to a global audience. The performance was watched by 47 million viewers, and Michael's backward slide became an instant cultural phenomenon. The move was so captivating, so seemingly impossible, that it had to be replayed multiple times during the broadcast. In that moment, Michael Jackson didn't just perform a dance move, he created a piece of entertainment history. What the millions of viewers didn't know was that the move they were seeing had its roots in a technique that Bill Robinson had developed in the 1940s, that Sammy Davis Jr. had preserved and modified in the 1950s and 60s, and that had been passed down to Michael Jackson in a recording studio in 1979. The moonwalk became Michael's signature move, the technique that audiences around the world most associated with his performances. It appeared in music videos, live concerts, and television appearances throughout his career. The move became so iconic that it transcended entertainment and entered popular culture as a symbol of Michael Jackson's unique artistry. But for those who knew the real story, the moonwalk represented something even more significant than Michael's individual genius. It represented the continuation of a tradition that connected the greatest dancers of different generations, a chain of knowledge and technique that linked Bill Robinson to Sammy Davis Jr. to Michael Jackson. Sammy, who continued to perform for many years after that session with Michael, would often reference that afternoon when discussing the evolution of dance and entertainment. What Michael did with that move, Sammy would say in interviews, was take something that had been part of dance history for decades and transform it into something completely new. But more than that, he showed how entertainment builds on itself, how each generation learns from the previous one and then creates something that the next generation can build on. For Michael, the lesson he learned from Sammy went far beyond just the mechanics of a single dance move. It taught him about the importance of understanding and respecting the history of his craft, while still finding ways to innovate and create something uniquely his own. Sammy taught me that everything in entertainment is connected, Michael said in a 1987 interview. Every move I do, every song I sing, is built on the foundation that performers before me created. My job is to honor that foundation while still pushing the art form forward. The moonwalk became such a central part of Michael's identity as a performer that it's difficult to imagine his career without it. The move appeared in some of his most memorable performances and became a defining element of his public image. But perhaps most importantly, it demonstrated Michael's ability to take traditional techniques and transform them into something that felt completely contemporary and revolutionary. The story of how Sammy Davis Jr. taught Michael Jackson the technique that became the moonwalk is more than just entertainment history. It's a testament to how artistic knowledge is passed from one generation to the next, how great performers honor their predecessors while creating something new, and how a single afternoon in a recording studio can lead to moments that change popular culture forever. Years later, when dance historians studied the evolution of the moonwalk, they would trace its lineage back through Michael to Sammy to Bill Robinson, recognizing it as a perfect example of how entertainment traditions evolve and transform across generations. The move that amazed the world in 1983 had its roots in techniques that were decades old, proving that the greatest innovations often come from combining respect for the past with the courage to envision something new. The afternoon that Sammy Davis Jr. spent teaching Michael Jackson would become one of the most significant mentoring sessions in entertainment history, connecting two of the greatest performers of their respective generations and creating a cultural phenomenon that continues to inspire dancers and entertainers around the world. If this incredible story of cross-generational mentorship, the secret origins of the moonwalk, and how entertainment legends build on each other's innovations inspired you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to remember that our greatest achievements often come from learning from those who came before us while still finding our own unique voice. Have you ever learned something from a mentor that transformed how you approached your craft? Let us know in the comments about the teachers who helped shape your abilities, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing stories about how entertainment history is made through the generous sharing of knowledge between generations.